The sun hung high over the bustling city, casting long shadows along the pavement. In a tall glass building, Maria stood in front of the large, polished reception desk, her heart racing with anticipation. She adjusted her blazer, feeling the weight of unspoken secrets in the crisp fabric. She was about to meet someone important, the kind of important that could change everything. As she looked around, her eyes landed on a man waiting near the entrance. His name was Jake. He had come in wearing a casual navy shirt that seemed to fit him perfectly, with jeans that hugged just the right places. He smiled, a hopeful look on his face, but Maria knew that smile wouldn't last. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension surrounding her. She said, not meeting his eyes, she could sense his confusion. It was unexpected and he looked like he might argue, but she didn't give him the chance. Just stay close. I'll be out in a minute, she added, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than an expression of comfort. Jake nodded, the smile faltering just a little. He stepped back, still watching her intently as she turned away from him. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft whoosh, sealing him out. Inside the elevator, Maria felt the warmth of the confined space wrap around her. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The elevator lurched upward and the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her. Maria was going to meet Mr. Henderson, the director of operations, a man known for his ruthless decisions and cutthroat tactics. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that she was here, it felt entirely different. What if the conversation went wrong? What if she couldn't get the promotion she had worked so hard for? The elevator dinged softly as it reached the executive floor. The doors opened and the air buzzed with a different energy. Maria stepped out into a more refined world, where the carpet was plush beneath her feet and the walls held dark, elegant artwork. She straightened her posture, reminding herself of all the nights she had stayed up late preparing for this moment. Mr. Henderson's office was at the end, and she could already see him through the glass, sitting behind a grand, imposing desk. He had a reputation for being sharp and unyielding, and his expression was exactly what she had expected, cool and calculating. As she knocked 3 times, the sound echoed in the hollow hallway. "Come in," he called out. The voice was rich and slightly gravelly, as though he had spent years perfecting his command over it. Maria pushed open the door, stepping into the room as she took one last breath, ready to project confidence. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said smoothly, trying to match his tone. "Take a seat," he replied, barely looking up from the documents spread across his desk. Maria felt a pang of nerves, but she sat down and crossed her legs, her hands resting neatly on her lap. "Let's get straight to it," he said, finally looking at her, his eyes piercing through the air between them. "You requested this meeting to discuss a potential promotion." In that moment, Maria felt a rush of energy. She poured her heart into her words, explaining her strengths, her years of dedication, and the successful projects she had managed. She could feel the tension in the air shift slightly as she spoke, a mixture of admiration and skepticism flickering across Mr. Henderson's face. But just as she began to sense a glimmer of hope, the phone on his desk rang sharply, cutting through her momentum. He answered it, a brief but heated conversation unfurling. Maria watched, feeling invisible, as he glanced at her with impatience. Finally, the call ended and he turned back to her. "All right, let's wrap this up." Maria nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course," she replied. After the meeting, she walked back to the elevator, the weight of uncertainty filling her chest. Outside, Jake was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed, his worry evident in the furrow of his brows. He asked, standing up straight as she approached. She forced a smile again, trying to keep the disappointment from creeping into her voice. He tilted his head, not fully convinced. "Want to grab a coffee?" Maria hesitated. Part of her wanted to bask in the comfort of his company, but another part clung to that gnawing doubt. "I should probably go home and prepare for next steps," she said, echoing the pragmatism the meeting had equipped her with. Jake searched her eyes, and for a moment she felt like he could read every unspoken word. "Okay, I know," she replied, her voice a whisper. As they bid each other goodbye, Maria walked towards her car, her heart still racing. She had to accept the possibilities that were out of her hands now. But when she arrived home, her mind raced with thoughts, endless scenarios replaying the meeting in her head. A few days passed, each one feeling longer than the last, filled with anticipation. Every email ping made her jump, every phone call felt like either a blessing or a curse. The waiting game was agonizing, but then one bright morning her phone buzzed with an invitation to the board meeting. As she read the email, she felt a rush of adrenaline. This was her chance to showcase herself again, to further the discussion about her promotion. But that night, as she prepared her notes and rehearsed her points, doubts began to surface. What if she wasn't as ready as she thought? The meeting room was grand. Seated around the long table were some of the highest echelons of the company, including Mr. Henderson. As they discussed upcoming projects, Maria focused on how best to position herself. When the time came, she spoke confidently, her voice steady, and the room's eyes shifted toward her. Before long, the discussions flowed around her, and she felt exhilarated by the participation. Mr. Henderson seemed to take a bit more note of her contributions. But as the meeting wrapped up, a chill ran down her spine. She knew this wasn't over yet. Weeks rolled by again, and then one afternoon, Maria received an unexpected notification. The company had updated its executive elevator access list. Intrigued, she pulled it up, and there it stood, Jake's name. He had been promoted. Her heart sank. Moments spun back to when she had pushed him away, the face he must have held when she had told him to wait outside while she took her shot. Was it too late for them? She had thought of Jake as just a friend, but staring at that list shifted something in her mind. When she saw him later at the office, he was glowing with a newfound confidence. He looked polished and professional, his navy shirt traded for a tailored suit, and she had to catch her breath. As he approached, the eyes of the others turned, and he was no longer the casual guy waiting outside. He radiated authority. "Hey," he said with a grin, but it felt different now, laced with triumph and a hint of the unknown. "Congratulations on your promotion," she said, forcing a steadiness in her voice. "I saw your name." "Thanks," he said, his face lighting up, but the warmth in his eyes held a touch of something unspoken. Somehow, those words struck Maria harder than she anticipated. The regret for having pushed him away earlier twisted in her gut. Was it too late to tell him how she felt? The walls around her heart felt too thick, yet the urge to break through them surged strong. "I guess we both had our turns," she said, trying to lighten the tension with a smile, but it felt brittle. "I'm sure you'll get yours soon," he replied, his gaze unwavering, and in that moment Maria hoped he could sense her struggle. Days passed, each one a tangled web of opportunity and self-reflection. Maria's focus shifted between ambition and the quiet ache of realizing the bond she had nearly let slip away. It was a rain-soaked evening when chance turned the tide. They found themselves in the elevator together, the air thick with unsaid words. As the doors closed and the lights flickered, Jake turned to her intent. Maria swallowed hard, the nerves flooding her veins. His voice was steady, strong. She hesitated, anxiety fluttering in her chest. "It doesn't feel like that when you're not there. I guess I just want to know what you're thinking." As the elevator lurched downward, she felt that familiar energy rising again. Hadn't she longed for this moment? "I pushed you away. I was scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake smiled, but it was filled with understanding. "Then let's not do that anymore. Let's not wait on each other." The elevator doors opened, but for Maria, the moment felt timeless. She was no longer sure if she was stepping out into the world outside or taking a leap of faith into something new. The choice stretched before her, wide and enticing. With each step into the future, uncertainty faded, replaced by a fierce hope. Maybe this time they wouldn't wait. Together, they could embrace whatever lay ahead. The glass doors of the high-rise building slid open with a soft swoosh, and Maria's pulse quickened as she took a deep breath. Today was the day she'd been waiting for. As she stepped into the glossy lobby, she scanned the room, her eyes finally landing on Jake, who was leaning casually against the marble wall. His confident smile sent a spark through her, but the moment she felt excitement, self-doubt snapped back. She said, her voice steady even as panic gnawed at her insides. Jake's expression faltered. "Outside?" he questioned, concern flooding his face. "Yeah, I need to handle this on my own," she rushed out, unable to let herself falter. "All right, but I'll be right here," he said, running a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "Thanks, I'll be quick," she promised, but in her heart, she knew this might take longer than either of them expected. She stepped into the elevator, the doors closing him out, and for a moment she focused on her own reflection in the polished surface. This was it, a meeting with Mr. Henderson, the notoriously tough director of operations. She straightened her back, breathing in and out like a practiced warrior preparing to cross the battlefield. The elevator glided up, her stomach doing a flip with every passing floor. Mr. Henderson was the kind of man people admired but also feared. He ruled from his tower like a king, casting long shadows over those clawing their way to the top. Every female employee whispered about the door he controlled. Few dared to enter without proper preparation. The last thing Maria needed right now was to panic. The elevator dinged as it reached the executive floor. The doors slid open, revealing a tastefully decorated hallway illuminated with soft, warm light. She walked toward Mr. Henderson's office at the end, trying to quell the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. As she approached his door, she felt a stab of doubt. What if she bombed this? What if she wasn't ready? The thought almost made her turn around, but she couldn't. She needed this. With a firm knock, she waited. Maria pushed open the door, stepping into his domain. The room was grand, with dark oak furniture and a large window overlooking the city, the skyline shimmering under the afternoon sun. "Mr. Henderson sat behind an imposing desk, his eyes sharp as they met hers. "Sit," he commanded. She did, folding her hands neatly on her lap. "Thank you for meeting with me," she began, her voice steady. He leaned back, steepling his fingers against his chin. "Let's get right to it. You want a promotion." Maria took a breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She had rehearsed this countless times in front of her mirror, but now the words seemed fragile. "I've worked hard for the past 5 years. I've led several successful projects and brought in clients that you know." He raised an eyebrow, a smirk dancing on his lips. "But do Do you really think hard work is enough? This place demands more than just effort. She felt her confidence waver but pressed on. I believe I have those qualities too. I've developed strong connections with clients and team members. Interesting, he said, tapping a pen against the desk. The rhythm echoed the doubt in her mind as she watched him consider her words. Just then the phone rang, disrupting the moment. While he answered, Maria felt a wave of frustration wash over her. Why now? She wanted him to focus on her, to see her potential. As he spoke, she let her mind wander back to Jake. He stood outside, waiting, trusting her to navigate this pivotal moment. Would he ever understand the pressure weighing down on her? Did he know that beneath her professional demeanor, she often felt like an imposter? When the call ended, Mr. Henderson resumed his gaze on her, but the energy around him had shifted. I'll need time to think about this, he said, dismissing her with a wave. Her heart dropped. Of course, she managed, rising from her seat. The air in the room felt heavier, suffocating. As soon as she stepped back into the elevator, disappointment bubbled over. What if she had just blown her chance? The descent felt even longer than the way up, each passing floor chilling her spirit. When the doors finally opened, she walked toward the exit, where Jake was still waiting, but now he looked different. His eyes glimmered with concern. He asked, stepping closer. I don't know, I'm not sure if he saw my value, she admitted, her voice heavy. He furrowed his brows. What do you mean? It's complicated. It's not just about hard work, it's also about presence, influence. It's a game, she sighed, biting her lip. Then let's change the game, Jake said, determination shining in his eyes. She found comfort in his presence, but part of her hesitated. We should strategize, maybe we can brainstorm ways to bring more visibility to your work, he suggested. If you're going to help, I can't let you down, she replied, anxiety creeping in. Then don't think of it as letting me down. Think of it as an opportunity. Maria nodded, but doubt still played like shadows in the corners of her mind. That night, as she lay awake, she kept staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was truly ready to seize her chance, if she had the strength to pull it all together. Days trickled by, stretching into agonizing weeks filled with more waiting. Each email notification made her heart race, but it was never what she wanted. Just mundane business updates, each one swallowing another piece of her hope. Then one humid afternoon, she found herself in an unexpected meeting with her team. As they gathered in the conference room, the conversation shifted to growth and promotions. Her boss, Mark, cleared his throat nervously. He pulled out a printed sheet and began naming names. First, we have a few team members who have truly gone above and beyond their roles. Congratulations to Sarah, Alex, and a stunned silence wrapped around her. Jake had been promoted. Her heart raced, part of her swelling with pride, but another part twisted with confusion and hurt. His name echoed in her mind, lingering like a bittersweet song. Unable to shake off her feelings, she stepped out of the meeting with anxiety gnawing at her. As she made her way through the crowd, she pulled up the executive elevator access list on her phone, her fingers trembling. Half expecting to see it, she confirmed it. There it was, Jake's name bold and paramount. Why hadn't he told her? What had kept him silent? The thoughts battered against her like waves. Her emotions stirred, colliding and combining into a storm of jealousy, admiration, and confusion. Trying to shake off the chaos in her mind, Maria approached the break room where Jake stood chatting with a couple of colleagues. When he saw her, a broad smile burst across his features, lighting up the room. Hey Maria, he announced, stepping toward her. Yeah, I heard, she replied, forcing a smile. Thanks, I couldn't have done it without your support. You inspired me, he said, sincerity lighting his gaze. It cut deeper than she realized. Really, you? Honestly, it happened pretty fast. I wasn't even sure if I'd get it, but you've been such a driving force for me, always pushing forward. It motivated me to take a step forward, he said, his words wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Her heart fluttered, but barriers built from doubt still held her back. She asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. He frowned, confusion shadowing his features. I don't know, I just feel left behind. Maria, I didn't want to distract you from your own ambitions, he said, his voice steady but gentle. You're the one with the fire and talent to shake things up here. Then let's discuss how I can be part of this, she found herself saying. The words surprised her, bursting forth from the depths of her frustration and hope. Jake's smile faded to seriousness, a glimmer of something deeper passing between them. Yeah, absolutely. Let's show them what we can do together, he agreed, a spark igniting in his eyes. The thought of collaboration filled her with newly discovered energy. It felt like they were joining forces, combining their dreams into something tangible. Days turned to weeks, and all around them, projects flourished as they worked in tandem, pushing each other to create, innovate, and achieve. Each small step felt monumental, and a sense of camaraderie grew stronger. Maria felt more invigorated than she ever had, ready to face whatever came next. She found herself smiling more often, and when she glanced at Jake, something else blossomed within her, the realization that she had not only grown more confident in her work, but in her relationship with him. Then one day, when they were leaving the office together, Jake turned to her with a serious expression. I want to talk to you about something important, he said, stopping in his tracks. Her stomach tightened. What could it be? She immediately thought of what she could be doing wrong. She asked, feeling the underlying tension. Not exactly. Her heart raced. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. I've realized how much you mean to me. What we've built isn't just about work, it's so much more. Maria felt a high tide of emotions wash over her, uncertainty and hope blending in an intoxicating mix. I feel the same. They stood there, the busy street alive with the sound of city life, but in that moment it was just the two of them, everything else fading into the background. Let's not play it safe anymore, he said, stepping closer. With her heart pounding, she reached for his hand, and when their fingers intertwined, it felt as though 1,000 doors opened at once, leading to a world they would create together. As they walked down the street, bright lights flickering all around, Maria understood that waiting outside no longer mattered, not when they could step into life together side by side. The flickering fluorescent lights in the office building felt almost surreal as Maria hurried toward the elevator. Her heart pulsed loudly in her chest, drowning out the noise of the city outside. She took a moment to catch her breath as she turned to Jake, who was leaning casually against the wall, a half-smile gracing his lips. She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Panic simmered just under the surface. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. He replied, a flash of confusion crossing his face. Yeah, I need to focus, she said, forcing herself to sound confident. Okay, if that's what you want, he replied, but there was a hint of disappointment in his voice. As she stepped into the elevator, the door slid shut, sealing him off from her thoughts. Inside, Maria leaned against the cool metal and let out a shaky breath. This was it. This was her chance to impress Mr. Henderson, the director of operations. But the weight of her dread wrapped around her like chains. What if she stumbled over her words? What if he dismissed her outright? As the elevator climbed, she replayed her rehearsed speech over and over in her head. The promotion meant everything. It was the breakthrough she desperately needed. She wanted more than this entry-level job. She wanted recognition. She wanted power. The elevator dinged at the executive level, and she stepped out into the softly lit corridor, where the walls gleamed with dark wood paneling and artistic photographs. Each step felt like it echoed against her racing heart. Ahead was Mr. Henderson's office, and she could already see him through the glass, absorbed in a document. His seriousness loomed larger than life. With a graceful but shaky hand, she knocked on the door. Come in, he called, and she pushed the door open. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Henderson, she said, adopting a professional tone that masked her anxiety. He barely looked up. His eyes flicked back to the papers in front of him, not giving her the focus she craved. Maria sat, folding her hands in her lap, suddenly aware of how the chair loomed over her. It was all too easy to feel small in a room designed to intimidate. He asked, glancing at her briefly before returning to the paperwork. I wanted to discuss the possibility of moving into a higher position within the company, she said, her voice wavering slightly. He leaned back, finally looking her in the eye. She hesitated, caught off guard. I've contributed to several key projects that increased our client base. Talk is cheap, he snapped, piercing her with a look. Her heart raced. She had prepared for this. I believe I can bring innovative ideas and a fresh perspective. I know the market well. The corner of his mouth twitched in a smirk, but suddenly his phone rang, cutting through her momentum. He picked it up, his attention immediately shifting away from her. With each passing second, the walls seemed to close in. She couldn't sit in silence, watching him answer a call about some trivial issue. But she held back. Instead, she forced a smile, feeling the anxiety twist her stomach. The seconds stretched into minutes until he finally ended the call, turning back to her. I'll need some time to think this over, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Of course, she replied, her heart sinking. She had come here determined to make an impression, but it seemed she had missed again. As she walked back to the elevator, her heart felt heavy with disappointment. She glanced around the lobby, and there was Jake still waiting, leaning against the wall like he belonged. He asked, stepping closer. Her heart raced as she tried to muster strength to respond. Not sure, Jake echoed, disbelief etched on his face. Yeah, I know, she sighed, feeling her spirit dim. It's just the pressure is mounting. Don't say that. You're talented, Maria. You've worked hard for this, he replied, his tone earnest. She really wanted to believe him, but the shadows of self-doubt crept in. It's just hard. I need this. Jake hesitated, then said, what if we brainstorm ideas together? At that moment, something flickered within her. She smiled softly, appreciating his kind effort. That might help. Listen, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've got what it takes. She took a deep breath, feeling a warmth from his support. But as they spent more time together crafting ideas, she couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety that accompanied each late night spent trying to refine her pitch to Mr. Henderson. Through those weeks, she noticed something shift within her. Each brainstorming session with Jake felt more comfortable, the chemistry between them growing deeper. They laughed over coffee breaks, shared stories about their days, and that tension that had once existed began to dissolve into something electric. But that current came to a screeching halt one afternoon when Maria received an email notification that made her stomach churn. She opened it tentatively and felt the ground shift beneath her when she read, "Congratulations, Jake." Her heart sank as she read it again, her mind swirling in disbelief. How had she not seen this coming? How had he not told her? A sense of betrayal cut through her delight in his success. As she stared at the words on the screen, she fought back tears. What did this mean for them? Were they not in it together anymore? Later that day, just as she had finished processing the news, she saw Jake in a meeting with their boss, Mark. Through the glass wall, she saw the pride swelling on Jake's face as Mark congratulated him. The smile on his face shattered her heart. She couldn't be happy for him, not now. She stepped outside to gather her wits, pacing along the perimeter of the building, trying to push away the flood of emotions. When Jake joined her later, he looked buoyant, and she could feel his energy pulse in the air between them. He asked enthusiastically. "Yeah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thanks," he turned to her, his face lighting up. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't pushed me." Something twisted in her stomach. This felt unfair. "But you could have told me you were applying," she blurted out, the hurt spilling from her lips. "I didn't want to distract you. I thought you were so focused on your pitch," he said, frowning at her. "But what about me, Jake? I feel like I'm falling behind while you're standing at the finish line," she said, her voice rising. "Maria, that's not how I see it," he replied, stepping closer. "I want us to succeed together. I'm still here for you," she replied incredulously. "You're in a different league now." "Hold on, this isn't a competition," he said, placing a hand on her arm. "That's not what I want at all." She shook her head, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Then let's make it work. Let's raise each other up. You're talented, and we both know it. Don't let this consume you," he urged. For a moment, Maria felt the tension between them swirl like a tumultuous sea. But beneath the surface was something stronger, a sense of partnership she had almost overlooked in her anger. "I just don't want to lose you in all of this," she admitted, her voice softening. Jake's expression softened too. "You won't lose me. I want us to build something together, which is why you have to fight for this." But beneath that reassurance, doubt lingered still. The days turned into a blur of presentations, late-night strategies, and those constant whispers of self-doubt that trailed like shadows. Yet with every morning, Maria woke up determined to harness that worry into energy. Then came the day of her crucial meeting, the day she would pitch her vision to Mr. Henderson again. Preparing for the meeting felt like preparing for battle. Her palms were sweaty as she dressed in her best suit, smoothing down the fabric like a protective layer. Every pass of her hand lightened a weight she felt dragging at her confidence. When she finally stepped into the executive office, the atmosphere felt electric. The sun streamed through the window, highlighting Mr. Henderson's imposing figure waiting behind his desk. "Maria, you're back," he said, a hint of skepticism lurking beneath his polished exterior. "I've taken time to reconsider my strategy," she began, her voice steady, even if her heart raced. She presented her ideas, outlining every key point with clarity and passion. As she spoke, she could almost feel the tide shift in the room. Mr. Henderson's gaze didn't waver from her, and it gave her courage. "Interesting insights," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. As the discussion began to flow, Maria felt a surge of confidence. She knew her material. She had prepared endless hours for this moment, and now everything clicked into place as adrenaline pumped through her veins. "By targeting new demographics and refining our existing strategies, we can reposition our offerings in ways that resonate more with current market trends," she explained. Mr. Henderson nodded, his expression shifting as the conversation became more intense. The balance of power felt like it was finally tilting in her favor. After what felt like an eternity, he leaned closer. "I see passion when you speak. I see potential." Suddenly, it hit her this was what she had wanted all along. Not just respect, but validation. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," she finally said, her voice bursting with enthusiasm. As she left his office that day, she felt an unexpected lightness, the weight she had carried for so long dissolving. She spotted Jake in the lobby, an expectant smile on his face. He said, his eyes shining with excitement. "I think it went well," he seemed interested, she exclaimed, a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. When he pulled her into a celebratory embrace, it felt like home. Maybe they could navigate this new chapter together after all. Days later, when Maria received the official email granting her the promotion, she jumped for joy. The victory felt sweeter than anything she had ever imagined. It was only then, feeling the warmth of confidence wash over her, that she looked at Jake, who was standing beside her, pride radiating from his face. "Now we're a team," she said, grinning from ear to ear. "Together," he said, squeezing her hand tightly. In that moment, she knew they were no longer just climbing ladders separately, but forging a path that would carry them both higher than either could have dreamed. Their bond had transformed, forged in the fires of ambition, and together they stood poised to take on the world, two rising stars ready to light up the sky. The sun was just beginning to rise over the city, casting a golden hue on the skyscrapers that towered majestically against the blue sky. Maria stood in the lobby of her office building, her heart racing as she adjusted her blazer. Today was pivotal. She was about to meet Mr. Henderson, the tough-as-nails director of operations. This meeting could change everything for her. As she looked around, she spotted Jake, leaning casually against a column, a reassuring smile on his face. But as she approached him, the weight of pressure began to close in. She had to focus. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Wait outside," Jake said, a flash of confusion flitting across his expression. I need to center myself before the meeting, she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Got it, I'll be right here, he said, but she could see the disappointment lurking behind his facade as she stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting him off from her thoughts. Inside, Maria felt the elevator lurch upward, her stomach knotting with nerves. She took a deep breath. This was her moment to shine, her shot to finally prove her worth in a company dominated by the old guard. The elevator dinged, and she stepped out onto the executive floor, where the air felt different, thicker, charged with a sense of urgency. Each step toward Mr. Henderson's office felt heavier than the last, the polished floor almost echoing her pounding heart. Arriving at his door, she knocked 3 firm knocks, a rehearsed rhythm pounding in her ears. "Come in," Mr. Henderson's gravelly voice responded, commanding and authoritative. As she entered, she tried to project confidence, sitting in the chair across from his imposing desk. Papers were strewn carelessly, and a large window overlooked the city, the view almost dizzying. "Let's get straight to it." "Requested this meeting to discuss a promotion," he said without preamble, fixing her with an unyielding gaze. "Yes, I believe I'm ready for more responsibility," she replied, feeling a mix of excitement and fear coursing through her. He asked, "Because I've proven myself. I led several successful projects that exceeded expectations," she said, trying to maintain eye contact as her heart raced. He leaned back in his chair, analyzing her, a silence stretched between them, suffocating and heavy. And just like that, her confidence began to waver. "Interesting," he finally said, "but this job demands more than good ideas." She opened her mouth to argue, to prove that she had those qualities too, but before she could, his phone rang, slicing through the tension in the room. "Excuse me," he said, his frustration evident as he answered the call. Maria felt trapped, an audience member watching a scene unfold outside her control. While he spoke, her mind wandered to Jake waiting outside. Would he still be smiling when she walked out of here? Did he believe in her? The seconds dragged on, but eventually Mr. Henderson hung up, turning his attention back to her. "I'll think about what you've said. You can leave now," he stated, not bothering to mask his dismissal. Maria felt her world collapse around her. That wasn't a yes, that was hardly even a maybe. Disappointment washed over her in waves as she left his office, aware that the excitement she had walked in with had vanished. Back at the elevator, she spotted Jake waiting, arms crossed and concern written all over his face. He asked, a glint of hope in his eyes. "I don't know. He didn't exactly give me a glowing recommendation," Maria replied, frustration spilling out. "That's not good," Jake said, his brow furrowing. "But you can't let that stop you," Maria sighed. "I know, but sitting in there, all I could think about was how much of a long shot this was." "Stop it. You're more capable than you realize," Jake insisted. As much as her heart ached with uncertainty, she felt a flicker of gratitude for his support. "Okay, let's do it," she said with a weak smile. Days turned into a blur of work and late-night brainstorming sessions. They spent hours going over her ideas, tweaking her pitch, and learning how to stand firm in their beliefs. The chemistry between them grew, transforming their friendship into something undeniably special. But the world was spinning even faster outside their little bubble. One day, Maria arrived at work to find a buzz swirling in the office. It seemed everyone was talking about promotions. Curiosity pulled her toward the break room, and she overheard whispers about new roles within the company. Her heart raced as she reached for her phone and checked her emails. That's when she saw it, the executive elevator access list updated. Steeling herself, she opened the email. Her heart plummeted as she scanned the names listed. Absolute shock settled in her chest as she read Jake's name. "Jake promoted," she mumbled out loud. A colleague asked, bursting with excitement. Everything felt surreal. Here was Jake, her support and biggest cheerleader, now ascending the corporate ladder without her. The betrayal stung deeper than she could have anticipated. That evening, Maria found herself pacing her apartment. How could he not tell her? Were they not supposed to be in this together? When Jake called later, she felt an almost visceral need to confront him. She said, her voice trembling. He replied, genuine concern in his tone. She demanded, every frustration spilling out. I didn't want to distract you." "You're in your zone working on your pitch," he said, a note of confusion swimming in his voice. She shot back, "Maria, it's not like that. I want you to focus on what you want," he insisted. "What about us?" she asked, feeling the heat in her cheeks rise. "Of course I care," he exclaimed, frustration tainting his voice. Silence hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she said, "I just feel left behind, Jake." "Listen," he said, his voice softening. "We can't allow this to tear us apart. I still believe in you. You're so talented." The sincerity in his voice began to break down the wall she had built around her heart. "So what now? Why can't we do both? I want to see you succeed in your pitch. I want us to lift each other up, not drag each other down," he replied, and Maria heard the determination in his words. After they hung up, Maria felt her heart begin to settle. Maybe the storm wasn't over, but perhaps it was one they could weather together. But now the days stretched ahead like shadows, leading straight into her next confrontation with Mr. Henderson. Preparing was agony. Each hour caught between self-doubt and determination felt like a roller coaster of emotions. Maria rehearsed her points tirelessly, trying to armor herself against the anxiety that threatened to creep in. The day of the meeting, she dressed carefully, choosing a power suit she hoped would help exude the confidence she desperately sought. When she stepped into the conference room, this time she felt ready. Mr. Henderson was seated behind his desk, the same sharp gaze awaiting her. "Absolutely," she began, her voice firm. As she laid out her pitch, she noticed Mr. Henderson's expression shift as he leaned forward, glancing at her notes. Each word spilled forth, a wave of excitement that emboldened her. She spoke about innovation, growth, and the synergy that could push the company to new heights. When she finished, Mr. Henderson sat back, regarding her with an intensity that made her fingers tremble. "Interesting proposal," he said, his voice contemplative. "But what makes you think you can deliver on these ideas?" Deep breath. "I've learned from every project I've tackled, and I've collaborated with colleagues to refine these proposals." His gaze bore into her, weighing her words as if sizing up a crucial decision. The silence stretched out, thick and uncertain. Finally, he nodded. "I'll need to review this further. I appreciate your determination." As she left his office, uncertainty still lingered, but for the first time hope crept in. Maybe this time she had knocked down the door just a little. When she stepped out into the lobby, her heart soared as she spotted Jake waiting, his smile illuminating the room. He shouted, excitement radiating from him. "I don't know yet," Maria admitted, the whirlwind of emotions still swirling in her chest. "But I feel lighter. That's what matters," he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. Days passed, and with each moment Maria held her breath, waiting for the email that could change her life for the better or shatter her dreams. The afternoon sun held a warm glow when she finally saw it, a notification ping on her phone. A message from Mr. Henderson. Steeling herself, she opened the email. As she read the words, disbelief settled in. "Congratulations, Maria," she gasped, her heart racing as a tidal wave of joy washed over her. She was in. She had finally done it. When she dashed out of her office to find Jake, she could feel her eyes brimming with tears of elation. "Jake, it's official." His face lit up, and he pulled her into a celebratory hug. "I couldn't have done it without you," Maria said, her voice warm with gratitude. In that moment, the world around them faded as they embraced. The hard work and endless hours of doubt transformed into something beautiful, a shared journey made stronger through every high and low. As they stepped back, Jake's smile softened. "What a ride this has been." Maria grinned, feeling the bond between them solidify in the radiance of new beginnings. They were no longer just colleagues, they were a team ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, side by side. With a sense of victory swirling around them, Maria knew the sky was the limit, and together they would soar. The sun had barely risen, but the city was already waking up. Maria stood in the lobby of the tall glass tower where she worked, her heart racing like a drum in her chest. Today was the day she'd waited for, the day when everything could change. She had prepared for weeks, practicing her pitch in front of the bathroom mirror, running through every possible question Mr. Henderson might ask. As she adjusted her blazer and took a deep breath, her eyes caught a glimpse of Jake, leaning casually against the marble wall, a devilish grin on his face. There was something reassuring about him, yet today she felt the need to keep him at arm's length. She asked, her voice steady, even as anxiety churned in her stomach. Jake raised an eyebrow, confusion washing over him. "Wait outside." "Yeah, I need to focus before the meeting," she replied, forcing a smile. He tilted his head, concern flickering in his eyes. The elevator doors slid shut, leaving him behind in the hustle and bustle of the lobby. Inside the confined space, Maria felt the warmth of the metal walls all around her. The elevator lurched upward, and with each passing floor, the pressure intensified. This was it. She would meet Mr. Henderson, the director of operations, and she had to impress him. As she stepped out onto the executive floor, she was met by a world of serious faces and expensive suits. The air felt heavier here, laden with ambition and unspoken expectations. She walked down the hall, her heels clicking rhythmically on the polished marble as she made her way to Mr. Henderson's office. Step resonated with the pounding of her heart. When she reached his door, she knocked 3 times, her hand trembling slightly. "Come in," came his deep voice from within. She opened the door and stepped inside, trying to project confidence as she took a seat in front of his imposing desk. "Thanks for meeting with me, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice firm despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. He glanced up, giving her a brief nod before returning to the papers sprawled across his desk. "Let's get straight to it," he said. "You want a promotion." Maria felt the weight of his stare but took a deep breath and launched into her carefully rehearsed pitch. "I believe I deserve this position because I've consistently delivered outstanding results over the past 3 years." Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair, his expression inscrutable as he regarded her. The question hung heavy in the air. She knew this was the moment to shine. "I've demonstrated my ability to manage projects effectively, and I've done it successfully under pressure." He remained silent for what felt like an eternity, studying her. The tension in the room felt almost tangible. Then, just as she thought she might burst from the weight of the silence, his phone rang, shattering the moment. "Excuse me," he said, irritation evident in his voice. Maria felt the energy drain from the room, leaving her behind to stew in her self-doubt. While he spoke, her mind began to wander. What if she didn't get this promotion? What if all her hard work was for nothing? And then she thought of Jake waiting outside, the supportive friend who believed in her talent. She had pushed him away, yet he was the one remaining steady through her storm. When Mr. Henderson finally hung up, he gave her a cursory glance. "Thank you for your time." It felt like an executioner's verdict as he waved her off. "Of course," she said, her heart sinking like a stone. She left his office feeling smaller than when she had entered, the enthusiasm of the morning extinguished. When she walked back to the elevator, Jake was pacing, worry etched on his face. He asked, springing forward as she approached. "Not well. He didn't seem interested, and I don't know," she admitted, the disappointment flooding her voice. Jake frowned, determination hardening his features. "What do you mean?" Her shoulders drooped as she leaned against the wall. "You don't understand. They have different expectations." "Then let's break it down together. We can brainstorm new strategies. I'm here for you, Maria," he offered, sincerity spilling from his words. She hesitated, swallowing her anger and frustration. It felt good to have someone on her side, but part of her wanted to push him away again. "I appreciate it." "Believe in yourself like I believe in you," Jake said, his voice steady. Days passed and Maria threw herself into her work, but every time she closed her eyes, she could see the moment she had looked into Mr. Henderson's eyes and felt that flicker of doubt. The weight of each passing day bore down on her, inching her anxiety forward into a crescendo. Suddenly, one afternoon, a buzz swept through the office like wildfire. Promotions were being announced, and the boardroom was abuzz with excitement. Maria's heart pounded as she stood in the break room, overhearing snippets of conversations. "Did you hear? Jake's name is on the list," a colleague said, her voice giddy with anticipation. Maria's stomach dropped. Jake promoted. She couldn't believe it. It felt painfully unjust, like a cold punch to the gut. Her mind whirled as she pulled up the executive elevator access list on her phone. Scanning through it, her heart stopped when she saw his name. It didn't feel real. The very person she had relied upon, someone she had pushed away moments ago, was now climbing the ladder without her. Another coworker asked, noticing her pale face. "Oh, nothing, just," surprised, Maria stammered, feeling resentment bubble beneath her skin. Later that night, Maria paced her apartment, the walls closing in on her as her mind raced. She felt betrayed, but mostly she felt alone. All those late-night brainstorming sessions, all the laughs they had shared, what did it mean now? The phone rang, jolting her from her spiraling thoughts. It was Jake. She hesitated, but eventually picked up. "Hey," he said, his voice bright with excitement. "Yeah, I saw," she replied, trying to keep her tone even. "I'm so pumped," he said, his enthusiasm pouring out. Maria felt a rush of anger surge through her. "Did you think to tell me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I didn't want to distract you from your own goals. You think I'm not allowed to feel anything about this? This isn't just a race to the top, Jake," she exclaimed. "Maria, wait, you're making this way more complicated than it has to be," Jake said, his tone more serious now. "Am I? Because it feels like I'm standing alone in the dark," she shouted, tears beginning to prick her eyes. "Listen, we can't let this tear us apart. Believed you'd get your moment too. I'm here, right here, ready to lift you up. You need to believe in yourself," he insisted. Silence fell between them, the weight of their words heavy in the air. "I want to believe in myself," she finally whispered. "You can still go up, Maria. Let this motivate you. We can tackle this together," he said, his voice softening. After they hung up, Maria felt the conflict warring within her. The world hadn't ended, and maybe she didn't need to let envy tear them. Yet the day of her next pivotal meeting loomed ahead like an ominous storm cloud. As the hours passed, her preparation turned into frenzied rehearsals. She knew this could make or break her future, and the stakes felt impossibly high. The day arrived, and Maria wore her best suit, desperately trying to project an image of confidence, but every thread felt heavy with expectation. When she entered Mr. Henderson's office, it felt so much bigger than before, the air charged like static. "Welcome back, Maria," he greeted, his tone cool and reserved. "I'm here to present a new proposal," she said, her voice steadier than before. Over the next few moments, as she laid out her ideas with renewed fervor, the room felt alive with possibility. She could feel every point connecting with him. With each word, she infused her passion, letting him see her vision for the company. He was silent, leaning in as she spoke. The longer she talked, the more she felt like she had him engaged. Finally, his expression shifted, and he leaned back in his chair, contemplating. After what felt like an eternity, he said, "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this." Relief cascaded down like rain, allowing her to breathe for the first time since she had entered. "Thank you," she replied, her heart swelling with cautious hope. As she left his office, she felt lighter, as if the storm clouds that had hung over her had begun to dissipate. Jake was waiting for her in the hallway, a grin playing across his face. "So," he asked, bouncing on his feet with impatience. "I think it went well. He seemed really engaged with my ideas," Maria said, excitement bubbling back within her. Jake exclaimed, pulling her into a celebratory hug. The warmth enveloped her, easing the tightness in her chest. In the days that followed, as she awaited the final verdict, anxiety danced through her, but it was laced with newfound conviction. She realized she could harness this energy, turn it into fuel for her ambition. One morning, while sitting at her desk, a notification pinged on her phone, a message from Mr. Henderson. Her heart thundered as she opened it. "Congratulations, Maria." The room spun as disbelief washed over her, and with it, a wave of triumph rushed through her veins. She had done it. Stumbling out of her chair, she raced to find Jake, who was at the water cooler with a couple of other colleagues. She shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. He turned, and the moment their eyes locked, a smile broke out across his face. "What happened?" she gasped, tears of joy brimming in her eyes. "Yes," he yelled, rushing over to engulf her in another hug. The warmth between them felt electric, as if everything they had worked for had finally burst into life. "You were right, I needed to believe in myself," she said, laughter mixing with tears. "Of course, you did this?" he asked, his eyes shimmering with equal parts pride and excitement. The world around them faded as they stood there, raw joy pulsing between them. In that moment, neither the promotion nor the path ahead felt like a struggle. It felt like a victory shared, a partnership forged through challenges, now ready to step boldly into whatever awaited them. As they walked out of the building together, a brand new city sprawled before them, a blank canvas for the future they would create. They knew the sky was the limit, and side by side they would soar. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing her in as the unmistakable ring of the call echoing from the other side faded away. Maria leaned against the cool metal wall, trying to catch her breath. The weight of what she was about to do pressed heavily on her shoulders. She had told Jake to wait outside just moments before stepping into the lion's den. "Focus," she whispered to herself, trying to drown out the mix of excitement and dread churning in her stomach. Today was everything. Today could mark the turning point she had dreamed of. She was not just seeking a promotion, she was reaching for validation, the recognition that she was more than just a cog in the corporate machine. As the elevator ascended, she glanced at her reflection in the polished surface. Smoothing her hair and adjusting her blazer, she tried to project confidence. In her mind, she rehearsed her pitch, the meticulously crafted words flowing through her thoughts like a script. The elevator dinged, halting her internal monologue. The doors slid open, revealing the executive floor shimmering with polished ambition. Maria stepped out, the air thick with unspoken power. She could almost taste the tension, the palpable anticipation of those who occupied this realm. With each click of her heels against the marble floor, she marched toward Mr. Henderson's office, her heart pounding louder with every step. She reached his door and paused, taking a deep breath. Knocking 3 times, she felt her pulse quicken. "Come in," his voice commanded, deep and authoritative. Pushing open the door, Maria entered and glanced around the lavish office. Everything felt bigger, more serious than her own space. Mr. Henderson sat behind an imposing desk, papers strewn across its surface like remnants of battles fought and won. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming, Maria," he asked, his gaze sharp. "Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Henderson." The words came out smoothly, but the underlying tension twisted her stomach. He raised an eyebrow, leaning back slightly. Maria felt a rush of determination. This was her moment. "I've worked here for over 3 years and have consistently exceeded expectations." Her voice steadied as she spoke. "Sounds good on paper," he said, a smug look on his face, "but this job requires more than just good intentions." Silence hung between them, heavy like a lead weight. She could feel the walls closing in. Did he doubt her? Did he see her as just another employee? "I bring a fresh perspective and innovative ideas. I'm not afraid to challenge the status quo," she asserted, channeling every ounce of her resolve into her words. He leaned back in his chair, his steely gaze never leaving hers. "Interesting. You understand we have a culture here, a way of doing things that's been in place for years." Maria swallowed hard. "But it's necessary. Our competitors are innovating every day." For a moment, the tension seemed to lift, replaced by a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. They engaged in a lively back and forth, Maria feeling emboldened by the exchange. Yet beneath her confidence, doubt crept in with every minute that passed. Suddenly his phone rang, cutting through their conversation like a knife. He answered it, the tone of his voice shifting from interested to curt. Maria felt invisible as she waited for him to finish. Each second felt like an hour as she paced in the silence of her mind, anxiety tumbling over itself. Finally, he ended the call and looked back at her, impatience seeping through his demeanor. "Maria, I need to think this over." Her heart sank. It felt like a dismissal, not a potential opportunity. "Of course," she said, her voice small as she left the office, the earlier thrill evaporating into thin air. As she approached the elevator, the world felt dimmer. Jake was waiting just outside. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Hey, not great," she replied, deflation lacing her words. Jake's expression fell. "That's tough." The doubt gripped Maria's heart like a vice. "Maybe I'm not meant for this," she sighed, frustration bubbling up. "Let's brainstorm together," Jake suggested. His voice was solid and unwavering, a lifeline amid her spiraling thoughts. The warmth of his faith in her ignited a small flicker of hope. "You're right." The following weeks were a flurry of late-night brainstorming sessions, idea after idea being tossed around, building energy between them. Through it all, Maria found herself drawn not just to the work, but to Jake. Their camaraderie deepened into something real, something that transcended the office space. Then one day, while caught in the whirlwind of her routine, a sudden buzz enveloped the office. Whispers carried through the halls like wildfire, and Maria's curiosity piqued. Did you hear? Jake's name is on the executive elevator access list, a colleague exclaimed, excitement brimming in her voice. Maria's heart dropped. Jake promoted. How could he not tell her? How could he not include her in that moment? She hurried to pull up the access list on her phone, dread pooling in her stomach. Her worst fears were confirmed as she scanned the screen. Jake's name was boldly listed. Panic coursed through her. In the days that followed, those feelings of betrayal settled in like cold mist, shrouding their interactions. Each time she saw Jake, a mix of pride and resentment clawed at her insides. It shouldn't have felt like this. Jake asked one afternoon, catching her with a furrowed brow. Maria hesitated, caught in the tension. You know, the promotion, he asked, confusion clouding his eyes. I just feel overshadowed, like I'm still fighting for a spot while you're rising, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake frowned. I want to see you rise with me. I thought we could ascend together, she replied, her voice trembling with unspoken emotions. Days turned into weeks of strained silence as she wrestled with her feelings. Maria felt torn, caught between her aspirations and the undeniable frustration that grew every time she saw Jake in the executive role she longed for. The moment came when Maria pulled up the list again, biting her nails to keep her confusion at bay. The weight of unexpressed emotions hung like a cloud, and she found herself feeling alone, even in the same space with Jake. It felt wrong to blame him, yet the resentment clung to her. On an ordinary Friday, Maria received an unexpected notification. It was an email from Mr. Henderson inviting her to the boardroom for a discussion. Her heart raced with anticipation mixed with anxiety. This could be the moment. As she entered the boardroom, her pulse quickened, but she refused to be shaken. She straightened her posture, determined to leave her mark. Just as she did before, she opened her presentation with poise, explaining her strategies and ideas. The eyes of the board members bore down on her. You could feel their scrutiny, but her nerves transformed into adrenaline as she spoke, her passion radiating with each word. Maria, Mr. Henderson said mid-presentation, you're showcasing some compelling ideas. She felt a surge of confidence as she answered, pouring her heart into her words. The room buzzed with energy, claiming her ideas as something worth discussing. It felt exhilarating to see interest sparkle in their eyes. This was it. Maria could sense the possibility tightening around her like a hug. After several rounds of questioning, Mr. Henderson looked impressed. I'll have to consider your proposal further, he said, a hint of curiosity streaking across his face. The moment she left that boardroom, her heart raced with elation. When Jake saw her, he could read the triumph in her eyes before she even spoke. He asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Better than I expected. I think they're interested, she exclaimed, the relief palpable in her voice. He shouted, joy spilling from him. With the weight of expectations lifting, she met his gaze, and for the first time in weeks, a genuine smile broke across her face. But the storm was far from over. As they plunged back into their work, the tension of who would rise and who would be left behind lingered. Yet somewhere deep within her, Maria began to feel a shift of realization that perhaps they both had something to gain, separate from their current situations. Days turned into an unpredictable wave of anticipation. Then one afternoon, an email notification chimed, sending her heart into her throat. She opened it, and disbelief washed over her. Congratulations, Maria. Tears pricked at her eyes. She had done it. The joyful moment took her breath away, the culmination of struggle, determination, and resilience. Finding Jake felt surreal. Jake, you won't believe it. His face lit up, radiating pure joy as he pulled her into a tight embrace. That's incredible. In that embrace, it struck her. They had both fought their individual battles, and now, as they stood at the precipice of new beginnings, they would embark on this journey together. Jake asked, a hopeful glint in his eyes. Endless possibilities, Maria replied, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. They stepped out into the bustling city, hand in hand, ready to face not just the challenges ahead, but the journey, knowing that they would support each other through any obstacle. Together, they would not just rise, they would soar. Maria's heart raced as she adjusted her hair in the elevator mirror, staring at herself as if she might see the confidence she desperately needed. Today wasn't just any day, it felt like the climax of a long, grueling journey. She was moments away from stepping into the executive office of Mr. Henderson, the formidable director of operations. The stakes were high, and she counted on her prep work to carry her through. Just before the elevator doors closed, her gaze flicked to Jake, leaning casually against a marble pillar in the lobby. He shot her a casual wink, a mix of encouragement and mischief in his eyes. She blurted out, urgency pooling in her voice. What? He asked, surprise etched across his handsome features. I just need to gather my thoughts. Trust me on this, she insisted, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Fine, but I'll be right here when you're done, he replied, stepping back as the doors slid shut. Inside the elevator, the familiar whirring sound filled the silence. The usual clang of anxiety began its retreat as Maria turned her focus inward, replaying her rehearsed pitch. This was it. Today could change everything. She could finally escape the shadow of her entry-level position. As the elevator reached the executive floor, she stepped out into a different world, walls lined with polished wood, floors gleaming with luxury. Each step felt deliberate, every click of her heels echoing her resolve. She paused outside Mr. Henderson's office, taking a moment to breathe. The weight of expectation anchored her as she knocked firm but respectful against the wooden door. "Come in," he called, authoritative yet welcoming. Maria entered, her pulse quickening as she faced him sitting behind a grand desk piled with papers. He looked up, eyebrows raising slightly but quickly returning to his focused expression. "Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Henderson," she started, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let's get right to it," he interrupted, folding his hands. "Yes, I believe it's time for me to move into a higher role," she stated, soft confidence framing her words. "Interesting," he replied, leaning back in his chair, his steely gaze fixing on her. She could feel the walls closing in, the weight of his scrutiny flickering over her like a spotlight. "I've successfully led multiple projects and brought in valuable clients." Mr. Henderson shifted his gaze to a paper, his expression unreadable. "Talk is cheap." With her heart pounding, she leaned forward, pouring her passion into her answer. "I know the landscape of our industry, it's shifting, and I have ideas that can keep us ahead of our competitors." He remained quiet for a moment until he pulled out his phone, almost lazily. "I need to take this," he said, turning away mid-sentence. Maria clenched her fists. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She had poured her heart into this moment only to have it interrupted by a call. She felt invisible, alone in a space meant for confrontation. When he finally hung up, the moment had shifted. "You may leave now. I'll consider what you've said," he said, waving her off like one might dismiss an unimportant detail. Her heart sank as emotions flooded through her. Had she failed, was everything she had prepared for a waste of time? Feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, she walked back toward the elevator, feeling smaller than ever. When she emerged, Jake was waiting, arms crossed, a slight frown tracing his lips. He asked, stepping toward her as if sensing the storm brewing inside. "Not great." He didn't seem interested, Maria confessed, her voice cracking under the pressure. "I can't believe that." "You are too talented for that," Jake said, frustration painting his features. "I don't know, Jake, maybe I'm just not cut out for this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't say that. You're equipped for great things. Let's work on this together. We can brainstorm strategies," he suggested, leaning closer, his determination spilling over. Maria hesitated, but the warmth of support caught her off guard. "Okay, but I can't allow this to derail me," she said with a nod, accepting his offer. That evening they stayed late, poring over every detail. Every line of her pitch was scrutinized, word by word. With each hour spent refining her approach, they began to explore thoughts beyond the workplace. Their laughter echoed late into the night, weaving into something deeper than friendship. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But as days turned into weeks, the unpredictable nature of corporate life loomed large, each day filled with the weight of uncertainty. Then one morning, as Maria was sipping her coffee, she overheard colleagues buzzing with excitement. "Did you hear?" a coworker exclaimed, practically bouncing in her seat. Maria's heart plummeted. Jake promoted. She scrambled to pull up the access list on her phone, her hands trembling. Her worst fears were confirmed. His name was emblazoned across the list in bold text. Panic circled in her mind like hawks circling their prey. Days passed, each one feeling like an eternity, and Maria felt the net of betrayal tightening around her. She glanced at Jake across the office, caught between an overwhelming sense of pride and heartbreak. She finally said one day, her heart racing as they stepped into the break room. "Sure," Jake replied, casually leaning against the counter. The words tumbled out before she could hold them back. "Yeah," he said, excitement lighting up his eyes. Maria swallowed hard, a wave of frustration spilling over. She asked, hurt spilling into her voice. "I didn't want to distract you while you're focusing on your pitch," he said, his voice losing the cheerful lilt. "Distract me, Jake, this feels wrong. We've been working together toward these goals," she snapped, her emotions boiling over. "Maria, calm down for a second," he said, disbelief flooding his gaze. "I thought we were lifting each other up. You're incredible." Her heart ached at his honesty, but the resentment bubbled up nonetheless. "This isn't just a race to see who gets to the top first. I thought we were in this together," she said, her voice shaking. He replied, frustration evident in his tone. "Let me help you." "You don't understand how it feels to be left behind," Maria said, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "Maybe you should focus on tightening your pitch instead of worrying about my promotion," he said, his voice steady yet vulnerable. She shot back, feeling the air thicken between them. An uncomfortable silence enveloped them. It was a moment hanging between pride and vulnerability, anger and support. "I didn't mean to come off like that. I still believe in you, Maria, and you need to believe in yourself," he said softly. In those few words, Maria felt the sharp edges of doubt blurring. Maybe she could harness this moment instead of letting it tear them apart. They had both invested so much time and energy, crossing boundaries together. Maybe a shared path was still possible. As days turned into a blur, they continued to work together, but the tension simmered just beneath the surface. Maria obsessed over memories of their laughter, forging visions of a future that still felt possible. And then came the day of her next meeting with Mr. Henderson, when everything was on the line. She had prepared tirelessly and felt a mix of determination and anxiety as she stood outside his office. This time her confidence surged unwavering. She knocked once and entered, the familiar scent of polished wood bringing back memories. "Ah, Maria," Mr. Henderson greeted. "Yes, thank you for seeing me," she replied, her heart thudding. As she presented her revised pitch, words flowed with newfound clarity. She spoke with conviction, emphasizing her plans and ideas. The energy in the room shifted, and she felt the tension dissolve into curiosity. "Interesting proposal," Mr. Henderson remarked. "Because I am ready to lead," she said boldly. "I've spent months refining my strategies." The corners of his mouth twitched, and she sensed a shift, a crack in the wall. "All right, let's discuss further," he replied, moving the conversation into fluidity. Maria left that meeting feeling lighter, her heart swaying with hope. It hadn't felt like a dismissal. She had made her mark and stretched her boundaries beyond the reality she had once known. When she ran into Jake later, he was all smiles, his eyes sparkling. He asked, buoyant with energy. "I think it went well, he seemed interested," she replied, a grin breaking across her face. Jake beamed, and in that moment it finally clicked. They were rooting for each other, shoulders pressed together in the relentless grind. Days turned into a waiting game again, but Maria fought to remain focused. Each day was a battle against her anxiety, fueled by the fear of rejection, yet she sensed an undercurrent of optimism keeping her afloat. Finally, one afternoon, the notification ping jolted her from her thoughts. It was an email from Mr. Henderson. The world seemed to halt as she opened it, breathless with anticipation. "Congratulations, Maria." It took a moment for the words to sink in, and suddenly her world shifted. She had done it, broken the chains that held her back, seized the opportunity with both hands. She shouted, her voice echoing as she rushed to find him. His head snapped around, and as soon as their eyes met, she saw his focus shift to pure joy. He asked, his excitement radiating. She screamed, unable to contain her happiness. Jake launched forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. "That's fantastic." They stood there, the world around them fading as it sunk in. Their journey wasn't just about promotions, it was about the support and connection they had built in the chaos. Maria asked, a playful smile spreading across her face. "We conquer the world," Jake declared, enthusiasm lighting up his features. And in that moment, everything felt right. They could take on any challenge together. They were ready not just to rise, but to thrive side by side, with a shared ambition to make their mark on a world that felt infinitely big. Leaving the building together that day, the city sprawled before them, vibrant and full of possibilities. Maria was ready to take the leap, knowing that together they could soar. The elevator door slid shut, trapping Maria inside as the soft hum of machinery enveloped her. Her heart raced while the walls felt as if they were inching closer, squeezing the air from her lungs. Just moments before, she'd asked Jake to wait outside to give her this one chance to prove herself. Now the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Focus," she murmured to herself, her reflection in the metallic doors showing a mask of determination. Today was everything. It was her opportunity to break through the glass ceiling, to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. As the elevator ascended to the executive floor, Maria couldn't help but replay her rehearsed pitch. She had envisioned this moment countless times, running through every possibility. What if Mr. Henderson dismissed her? What if he didn't even bother to listen? The elevator dinged, and the doors opened with a soft whir, revealing the hushed atmosphere of the executive floor. The sleek walls gleamed under the soft lighting, and as Maria stepped out, she felt the energy around her shift, crackling with ambition and unspoken challenges. Each step toward Mr. Henderson's office felt heavier than the last, like walking through molasses. When she reached his door, her nerves surged again. With a deep breath, she knocked, the sound echoing in the corridor. "Come in," he called, a timbre that held authority. Pushing the door open, Maria beheld Mr. Henderson seated behind his imposing desk, surrounded by a fortress of papers. His dark suit and sharp gaze made him seem both intimidating and powerful. "Thank you for coming, Maria," he said, barely lifting his eyes from the document. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Henderson," she replied, her voice steady, but inside, anxiety swirled like a storm. "Let's get to it," he said abruptly. Swallowing hard, she found her voice. "I'm here to discuss a potential promotion." He finally looked up, scrutinizing her as if she were a puzzle he needed to solve. "I've consistently met and exceeded my targets. I've successfully led projects that have not only met client expectations, but have also brought in new business for the company," she articulated, her heart pounding as each word picked up momentum. "Despite that, you're still just another junior employee in my eyes." His eyes narrowed as he focused on her. "Because I'm ready to take risks, to challenge the status quo," she declared, her resolve hardening. Maria noticed a flicker of interest in his eyes, but just as quickly it vanished. A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating, before Mr. Henderson's phone rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. "Excuse me," he muttered, barely glancing in her direction. The authority faded, leaving Maria feeling small and forgotten. She stood there, still as the clock ticked mercilessly, counting the seconds that slipped away. Finally, he hung up and leaned back, a practiced expression settling on his face. "I'll think about what you've said." As the dismissal rang in her ears, her heart plummeted. Had she failed? Was it all for nothing? Maria left his office with a heavy heart, her thoughts swirling in confusion and despair. When she stepped back into the lobby, Jake was waiting just outside, hands tucked into his pockets, concern etched on his face. He asked, stepping closer. "Not great," she admitted, feeling the weight of disappointment. The frustration in Jake's voice was palpable. "You've worked so hard for this." "I don't know, Jake. Maybe I'm just not fit for this," Maria said, the self-doubt creeping in like an unwelcome guest. "Don't say that, you're talented. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have something to offer. Let's brainstorm together. We can come up with ways to make your pitch stronger," he suggested, his voice filled with an earnestness that ignited a flicker of hope within her. "Maybe you're right," Maria replied reluctantly, the warmth of his support breaking through the wall she'd built around her emotions. As the days turned into a whirlwind of collaborative efforts and late-night brainstorming sessions, the bond between them deepened. They laughed over coffee breaks and shared their dreams, drifting further away from the shadows of doubt and closer to a shared vision of success. Weeks passed, and Maria's anxiety danced with determination as she prepared for her follow-up with Mr. Henderson. However, amidst the excitement and camaraderie, she began to sense an undercurrent of something deeper growing between her and Jake. Then one afternoon, while buried in an email, she overheard a conversation rippling through the office. A colleague chimed, excitement crackling in her voice. Curiosity piqued, Maria glanced over as many rushed to look. Her breath caught as she joined the throng, eyes scanning the list of names, her heart pounding louder with each name. When her eyes settled on Jake's name in bold letters, Jake Matthews, senior account manager, it felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. A cold wave of panic washed over her. He was promoted without telling her. Stunned, Maria stepped back, her heart racing. She felt betrayed and lost. Every moment they had shared suddenly warped into a painful reminder of what she might never achieve. The rest of the day passed in a blur, confusion distorting every interaction. When she saw Jake later, she couldn't mask the hurt flooding her chest. "Hey," he called, his enthusiasm bright. "Yeah, I did," she replied, a tightness creeping into her voice, a bitter edge she struggled to suppress. His smile faltered just a bit. "It's pretty great, right? I owe a lot to you for pushing me. I mean it. I wouldn't have gotten here without your support," he said, his sincerity radiating warmth. She felt the flames of anger and sadness mixing, almost choking her. Maria demanded, her voice sharper than intended. "I didn't want to distract you from your pitch, I thought you'd be too focused," he stumbled, confusion weaving through his expression. "Focus? This feels wrong, like a betrayal," she shot back, her emotions spilling over. His expression morphed from confusion to pained understanding. "Maria, please, you're my friend. I never meant for this to come between us." She burst out, her voice trembling. Silence hung thick in the air, both of them caught in a tempest of feeling. "I can help you, just let me know how," he said finally, desperation leaking through. "Helped," she replied, the hurt coursing through every word. "Maria, listen to me. We can still make this work. I want you to succeed. That doesn't change because I got a promotion," Jake implored, his hands open in earnest. She asked, feeling the knot in her stomach tight. He stepped back, the tension woven between them palpable. "We have to focus on your goals." But she could feel it, the shift, the unspoken pang of jealousy surging forward, eclipsing the camaraderie they had carved together. Despair rested heavily in her bones. Days turned once more as Maria navigated through office politics that bristled with untruths and half-smiles while she desperately worked on her project. Each conversation felt tainted by the distance growing between her and Jake. Then came the morning of her vital presentation with Mr. Henderson. This time she had to give it her all, pushing through all the sticky emotions. When she walked into his office, the familiar scent of polished wood stirred memories of ambition and doubt. Mr. Henderson was waiting, and this time, a hint of enthusiasm chiseled into his presence. He asked, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Yes, I'm ready to present my revised proposal," she said, her voice steadier than before. As she spoke, uncovering her refined strategies and innovative ideas, she saw interest blooming in his eyes. For the first time, the focus wasn't just a fleeting glance, it lingered, holding significance. She finished her pitch with unyielding determination. "With this proposal, I will not only enhance our current projects, but also strategically position us in upcoming markets." "Interesting," he replied, leaning back in thought. "But why should I trust you with this responsibility?" "Because I'm committed to seeing this through," she replied confidently. "I've grown with this company, and I won't let you or our team down." The air thickened with anticipation. Maria could feel the pendulum of opportunity swinging in her favor, and for the first time she felt it her moment. "Let's discuss this further," Mr. Henderson said, his tone shifting with a mixture of intrigue and caution. Maria left the office, her heart racing with exhilaration. She had taken a step forward, and the victory tasted sweeter against the waves of doubt. When she found Jake later, he was standing with some colleagues, laughing, and for just a moment she felt a rush of warmth. He asked as soon as her eyes met his. She exclaimed, the relief absorbing her anxiety momentarily. "I knew you could do it," Jake cheered, and in that moment a flicker of hope ignited within her. But deep down, the shadows of resentment still coiled around her heart, an itch she couldn't fully shake. The journey so close to their dreams felt irrevocably changed now. How could she embrace this victory knowing the distance had grown between them? In the following days, while waiting for a response, conflict wove itself through the office, tension building with every mirrored glance exchanged between Maria and Jake. Each conversation felt strained, as if they were both stuck between friendship and unspoken challenges. Then one afternoon, a notification pinged on Maria's phone, trembling with anticipation. It was an email from Mr. Henderson. She opened it slowly, her heart in her throat, and as she read the words, shock coursed through her. Joy and disbelief warred within her, the power of her journey suddenly tangible. Just as she was digesting the news, a figure appeared from behind the partition. It was Jake. He looked up, surprised by her animated expression. She shouted, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. "Wait, you!" He stepped closer, the surprise melting into pride. But as she embraced him, she felt the tension between them shift yet again, a flicker of reality creeping back in. The exuberance of this moment felt bittersweet, and just as quickly her joy collided with the complexities of their relationship. "We both made it," he said softly, holding her gaze. "Yes, together," Maria whispered, but the echo of their unresolved feelings lingered. As they stood there, surrounded by the hum of the office, Maria felt the weight of a cliff's edge beneath their feet. Their paths lay ahead like unpredictable turns in a road leading to something far greater, but the question remained, could they truly navigate this new world side by side, or was the strain between them too great? In that moment, Maria felt the currents of uncertainty swirl around them. The journey forward was unclear, and as joy battled with fear, the future stretched out like an uncharted expanse, ready to unfold in ways none of them could foresee.